All right, good morning. Aaron Scheel here again with Ziegler, Operator Training Manager. We're going to talk today about grade control next-gen excavators. So I want to really start from ground zero and work from startup and get it working. So we'll talk about some of the key things to pay attention to and look for. And where we're going to start on the business end right off the bat is to verify that we have the correct bucket selected in the work tool list. Okay? So on our back of our buckets here, you'll see an X number. It's been welded onto the bucket, obviously, so it's there and it doesn't get wiped off with a marker. All of our buckets that come through Ziegler will get assigned an X number. Why this is important is if you just were to go into the tool list and populate a bucket and call it sand bucket, well, there could be a lot of different sand bucket options. So we really want to get specific and make sure it's the right bucket, okay? So step one, as you're doing your walk around, you're greasing the thing, pay attention to the X number, and then we'll go in the cab and we'll look at the tool list and we'll make sure that that bucket is selected. And then we know it's measured up, the calibration should have been done and all that good stuff. Once it's done and it's in the list, you can switch out buckets, come back to it, and you're back in business. But has to have the right bucket selected to be accurate. Okay, so let's go in the cab and then we'll get started in the cab. All right, here we go. We're inside the cab of our new next-gen excavators. Again, this is going to be from the small to the large, so we'll see the same process. So what I'm going to do, again, I'm talking about right from startup. So we're going to just start from keying it on. And one of the reasons why I want to show you this is at startup, we're going to get information right off the bat as far as how the machine is set. So remember that X number I referenced? There it is. So we'll be able to see what our bucket is currently, what bucket is selected. We're currently in guess mode. Our pattern is cat backhoe or excavator pattern, and then we're set into our fast mode. Also, something else to pay attention to is the button configuration. So these buttons and switches can all be configured to operator preference. So if we were doing a lot of grade work, maybe we're going to have a certain button setup. If we were doing a lot of payload work, we may have a different setup altogether. So just something to be mindful of. We're able to reference that as we're working with a button over on the keypad here, the right keypad, button number 6, it's got that an eye for information. We'll be able to push and hold that. It'll bring that back up and refresh our memory if needed. So again, we got engine start as allowed. So we'll go ahead and hit the OK button. We can fire up. All right. So if you're going to be using the assist feature and temperature is such, we want to go ahead and take advantage of this warm-up mode. We're not going to necessarily need to do it, let it run full course, but I am going to show you what happens here. So if we check mark here and make sure the bucket's on the ground, if the hydraulic lock is unlocked, it will not allow us to do it. So keep the unlock or the lock, hydraulics are locked out. Hit the OK button. You'll hear the engine rev slightly, pumps will engage, and it'll start creating hydraulic oil temperature. Assist does let us work less with any temperature, but accuracy and controllability will get better with hydraulic oil temperature, so be mindful of that as well. All right, so if we want to get to work, we're going to just kick up unlock the hydraulics, activate the hydraulics, it locks us out of there, and we're ready to go to business. Across the bottom here, we've got some hot buttons. These are going to take us to the menus for each of these functions. So our grade, our e-fence, our automatic or our assist, and then our payload. The other way we can access the different systems is by just simply swiping across. Okay, so there's our e-fence, our payload, and our grade. So this is where we're going to start. So our grade, again, is giving us a profile of the bucket. We can face onto it. That little red triangle in there is telling us where our bucket focus is. Our method of corrections over here, percentage of grade, tilt. If we had a tilting bucket, we could do cross slope. And with our depth, we can add a depth or a cut into here. All right, so I talked about that number 6, that button there that gives us our information. So we can access and do our benchmarks and all that touching the screen, or we can configure the joystick buttons to do so. So the button couple buttons that I'm going to be using will be the benchmark button, and currently we have this button set to touch point, so we'll be using that, and then potentially the grade assist activation button. So those 3 buttons on the right joystick are the ones that we'll be using for grade control. When I talk about hitting a button, that's what I'm talking about. All right. From our information screen, again, we're able to see which bucket has been selected. So I'm pushing that number 6, that I information bucket over here, button, I'm sorry, and getting that information back. Let's say that number didn't line up. Okay, so maybe that bucket that's currently on the machine is not the one that's selected in the monitor. So we can come over here into our apps button, go down to our bucket work tool. There's our other options, right? So we can pick these other X number buckets have been measured up. We would make sure that those numbers match. You hit the button, make sure that the circle got filled in, and then that would be the bucket that is currently being looked at, right? So if we hit the bucket here, you can see that that did not fill up, so that's really not selected yet. Make sure that that button is filled, and there's our bucket. Our correct bucket is matched up. All right. So we know that that's good. It's going to want us to cycle the hydraulic lever if the hydraulics were locked out, just to verify that we've made a change there. Changes it in the system, and now we're good to go. So we can go ahead and use 2 methods to get us a benchmark. We're going to use our button and benchmark the tooth or the cutting edge on a known elevation. You could use a grade laser and benchmark off the grade laser and then dial in your cut from there. But again, we're going to just go ahead and reach over to a little pad that I've got set up on the ground over here. So I'm going to reach over, I'm going to set my cutting edge or the tooth, whatever it happens to be, on that edge. I'll hit my benchmark button. It's going to give us a notification that we've had success. We hear the tone, and that's telling us that we're on grade, or that's where we're at. If we didn't get that, potentially we have a cut stored here. So that would allow, or would just not give us the tone because we're needing to go some direction up or down to get to that on grade tone. I wanted to change that, so let's say we needed to go down 4 feet from that spot over there. I'm bringing this over here. We get 4 feet. We're going to make sure that we are going down. Hit the OK. Back to home. You see we've got a 4-foot cut there. Bring the cutting edge down to it, and we have 4-foot cut to go. All right. So that says we've got a 4-foot cut. Well, what happens if I move? So if I was digging a trench here from behind us, and I had to climb this pile up here, if we didn't correct it somehow, our floor of our trench would follow this pile up. So the machine needs corrections for any kind of elevation change it makes during travel. All right. So we've got our grade set in here. Again, we've got a cut for it. Let's go ahead to simplify that. Let's go ahead and put this back to 0 so that we're even. All right, we've got the tone there. We're going to go ahead and climb up on this pile. If we did that and I reached over this rock again, it's going to be basically the height of that pile to be grade. All right. So what we can do is we can use a touch point or a grade laser to make up for those changes in elevation. We're going to reach over here to the other side just for a good example and use this as a touch point. So that's anything that I can reach before and after I move the machine. So I'm going to go ahead and use the number 6 button here, touch point, a bottom button. Click it once, I'll get a tone. And then when I'm going to travel up on this pile, we're going to get a notification that grade is detected. Our travel is detected because once we've got a grade in there, so it's going to remind us that we need to do something about that, or our grade could very well be off, right? Climb up here and get settled on the top of our little pile here. If I reach over our grade, all right. So you can see it's given us a tone here. That's about how high our pile is. And as soon as I stop function, it's going to remind me, hey, you need to do the touch point. Well, we don't want to do it over here. We want to go back over to our spot. Put it back on there, relatively close to the same spot. Hit the same button. Rebenching has succeeded. I can come back to the other grade spot. Check it out. And we're on grade. All right, so that's how we make the corrections for elevation change as we travel with grade. So you can envision, I mean, this is a pretty substantial change in elevation. Climbed up onto a little pile for the sake of being able to see something, but if that was a gradual grade over a distance and you weren't checking in, your floor or your footing would follow that grade up. So we're going to need to benchmark or touch point in order to correct that and give the machine corrections as we travel. So that's using touch point. Now it's basically the same process. If we had a laser, we could reach and curl up and get that laser catcher out on the stick there in the laser beam. We'd catch that laser after we've benchmarked off of our known elevation. We'd catch the laser. We'd hit our reassigned button that we now have for touch point. We'd hit that button and it would reference the laser. We'd go ahead and move. We would then bring the machine back into that laser just like we brought back to the touch point. We'd re-reference that laser and it would correct our elevation change that the excavator made and we'd be back on grade. All right, so two ways to use that touch point and or laser reference in order to get corrections when we travel with grade. I hope that's been helpful. Quick from the start, from key start to activating grade and using the grade system. Again, I just want to make sure that we're clear on something that we do on the left-hand side. Have a grade bar that's going to give us indication of how high and how low we are from our target. So if we're using the indicate system, that is going to give us our guidance to be on grade when we're digging. So if I reach out about anywhere all the way around me, if I get that machine out or get it out on the grade, it's going to give me the tone, plus or minus, and I can just follow that grade as needed. All right. Very good. We wanted to use the assist feature with grade, which has overcut protection. We could take and turn on the assist. So I'm using a joystick button that's been assigned to turn on assist. You can see we've got grade assist, quick mode is active. So there I can bring it down, easily bring in on the stick. It's going to get close to grade, get on grade, and as I bring it in, it'll grade for me. So I'm not running the boom lever, the machine is grading for me. So the closer I get to grade at a start, we can easily grade on into us. All right, so that's using the assist feature with the grade that we've got set up. Super nice time savings. Just takes a lot of stress off of having to pay attention, and each pass is on grade. Very good. Well, thank you so much for your time, and yeah, explore the new technologies of the next gen excavator.